Hi, this is Josh Kulp. This is the video for Daf Kaf Aleph, page 21 of Masechet Avodah Zarah for Daf Shevui. We're dealing with a very sensitive topic on this daf because it is relevant to modern questions, very sensitive questions that come up in the state of Israel. And one of our longtime learners asked this question today on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, which I hope you'll join, called Daf Shevui. And the question was, do these prohibitions that we read about in the Talmud, do they relate to Arabs living in the modern state of Israel? Can one sell a field, a house, etc., to an Arab living in the state of Israel? So I don't want to really answer that question. Of course, I'm a pretty liberal person. I don't believe that we should discriminate against Arabs in this country. But I want to answer that question, sort of look at how it would be addressed by poskim, by authorities throughout the centuries. And in a sense, there's like two ways of looking at it. One is lumping all non-Jews together and say, look, the Gemara was talking about non-Jews. We need to encourage Jewish settlement in the land of Israel because Jews are somehow ontologically better than non-Jews, and God wants Jews to live in the land of Israel. God wants God's holy land to be inhabited by God's people who are Jews. And that is one way. It's it's not a way that I would subscribe to learning the Gemara, but I do think it is a way of thinking about the Gemara and some of these prohibitions, not just this one, that does appear throughout the ages. The other way of thinking about this Gemara, and of course other Gemaras as well, is that the Gemara is referring to a particular type of non-Jew, and that type of non-Jew, we have to examine every non-Jew to see if they are that type of Jew. So once we're in that camp of thinking about dividing the world, we could understand what it means to be a non-Jew or a goy in the Talmudic terms in two ways. One is a more classical understanding, and that this would be a person who worships idol worship. Another way of understanding it, though, might be that the goy is basically a code word for our barbarian, somebody who has no laws. In which case, in either way we turn, I do think that for the most part, classically speaking, Muslims have been excluded from these prohibitions. Certainly the Rambam did, and the Meiri did as well. So I do think that from a certain perspective, at least from a religious perspective, there's certainly ample reason to permit selling land to Arabs in the modern state of Israel. Again, even if I was to, I don't believe in applying halakha to the modern state of Israel. I believe that Israel is a democracy and should work under other lines. However, as I remarked on Facebook, I do believe in a certain sense that people have a right to make sure that their lands do not get sold to people who are enemies of theirs. I would not want neither the state of Israel nor any country in which I lived for an enemy to be able to buy up large swaths of land and use that as a way of colonializing, in essence, a land that belongs to another people. And since I do believe that currently at least large portions of the land of Israel are settled by Jews, I wouldn't want, for instance, let's say a very rich sheik from one of the Gulf states to come into Israel and buy up large swaths of land in order to expel Jews. But the truth is that has nothing to do with him being an Arab. I wouldn't want a rich European or a rich American to do that and settle it with Christians, or for that matter, anybody. And I do think that Israeli law does have to relate to such a situation. So it's a complicated issue. I do hope that you'll be able to learn this page without over-politicizing it all the time. I hope you'll keep it in mind that Eretz Yisrael during the time of the Mishnah and the Talmud was not controlled by the Jews, and I do think that there's inherently a difference between a text that is being written by a people being subdued versus a powerful people that is subduing others. And I think that the Mishnah and the Talmud is being written by a colonialized people who are being subdued by the Roman Empire, which helps me to understand these laws, at least in their historical context. And I do hope you keep in mind something that I think is very important, the individual human rights of both Arabs, Jews, and all people in the world to live freely and in their own land and to have equal rights with other human beings born in that land.